How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Aleph, Daf 11 of Masechta Nazir. Friends, talking about Nazir. Alright, we're going to start on Daf Yud Aleph, Mud Aleph, all the way at the top. It says the Mishnah, Mozgulas HaKos. Alright, they poured him wine. V'omar Areini Nazir Mimenu. And he says that I'm a Nazir from this cup of wine. How is a Nazir? I drank wine the other night. It was very good. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. I might need a haircut, but I'm not a Nazir. Maise bisha achal shoysa shikora. There was a maise with a woman who was fashnikit. Umazgula sakos, and they poured for her some wine. Vama areini nazir mimenu. And they said, and she said that she is a Nazira from this cup of wine. The Chacham said, "Lo neskavna zo ela, lo ma'areu olai korban." She was just trying to say that she's not interested in drinking that wine. That she's just saying that this particular wine is forbidden like a korban, but she's not saying that she is a Nazira. Says the Gemara, Maise Listar. What, you're bringing a Maise to contradict what you just said? The Reish of the Mishnah says that if they're pouring wine for a fellow, he says that he's a Nazir from this cup of wine. They say, well, he's a Nazir, full stop. They bring a Maisa of a woman who they're pouring her wine. She says she's a Nazir Mimenu. They say, oh no, she's not a Nazir. She's just not allowed to drink that cup of wine. I understand. You're bringing a Maisa to refute your whole point. First you say that he's a Nazir, and then you bring a Maisa where she says she's not going to drink, where she says that she's a Nazira from the wine, and they say that she's not a Nazira. Implying that, okay, she can't drink that cup, but she could drink other wine. It's missing a few words, and this is how you learn it. If they pour the fellow a cup of wine, and he says, I am a Nazir from the wine, from the cup. How is a Nazir? He's a Nazir full stop. Vim shikru, if he's fashnikit, and he says that he is a Nazir from the cup of wine. In that case, Eino Nazir. He's not a Nazir. He's only not allowed to drink that cup. My time. How come? Commando Omar, Hari Olai Korbenu. It's because he's saying it's as though this cup of wine is forbidden to me like a korban. And if you're going to say, what do you mean? If he's saying that it's also to him like a korban, let him say that it's also to him like a korban. Why is he saying he's a Nazir? So Sover Maisin li Achrina umitzayrinli. Because the guy is so fashnikit. Sometimes when you get so... Okay, let me tell you something. Sometimes when you're very fashnikit, you can keep on drinking. Like me the other night. Other times, when you're fashnikit, you say, I don't want... Here, so let me tell you something. It's like this. No, it's not like this. But in some ways, it's like this. That sometimes when you're fashnikit, you can just keep on drinking. But sometimes you have to know your limit. And that's what it is. Sometimes you have to know your limit. I'll tell you, for me... Whatever. For me... Everybody share in WhatsApp. What's your limit? So I'll go upon him. So he knew his limit, Baruch Hashem, so he knew that if he just says that this cup is to him like a korban, well then they're going to throw out that cup and bring him more because they want him to get super duper fashnikit. But so therefore he figured, Emaluhu hamilsa de psikalu. So he figures, you know what? Let me just pull out a trump card and just say that I'm a Nazir from the wine, and the people are going to be like, whoa, this dude just made himself a Nazir. We're going to leave him alone. But really, it's just a Nazir from the cup. There's a story with a woman who this very situation happened. Says the new Mishnah already, Nazir Amanashe A Shose Yain Mutame the Mason. You hear what he says? The fellow says he's going to be a Nazirite, but he's also going to be right under the condition that he could drink wine and or become impure to the dead. How is it? Nazir v'asa b'chulan. forget about it. He's a Nazir, and he's not allowed to drink wine. He's not allowed to become impure to the dead. If a fellow says, look, I know that there's this concept of Nazirus, but I didn't know that this Nazir fellow is forbidden to drink wine. I knew that, okay, right. A Nazir, right, yeah, he doesn't get a haircut. Alright, everybody knows, fine. I didn't realize he wasn't allowed to drink wine. He just thought, they wanted him to get a haircut, and he didn't want to, so he said he's going to be a Nazir. He didn't realize that now he couldn't drink wine. Chaval. How is it Osir? Reb Shimon Matir. Well, sorry kid, you're not allowed to drink wine, you're an absolute Nazir, you can't go to cemeteries. Reb Shimon Matir. Reb Shimon says no. He's not a Nazir. If a fellow says, look, I know what a Nazir is. I know that a Nazir is not allowed to drink wine. You hear this? But he figured that the rabbis would make an exception for him. They would let him drink wine because he can't live without it. Wow. Some people can't live without coffee. Some people can't live without wine. Wow. He says, look, I'm an undertaker. Obviously, I can't refrain from being Tamei Meis. How is a mutter? Reb Shimon Oser. Well, in that case, right, he says that he figured, even though he knows that a Nazir is not allowed to drink wine, not allowed to become Tamei Meis, he figured that they would make an exception for him because he can't live without it or because he's an undertaker. So Chacham say that, okay, he's not a Nazir, and Reb Shimon says that he's Take a Nazir. V'liflog nami Reb Shimon b'reisha. Fact the Gemara, Reb Shimon should argue oichet in the reisha. What's the reisha? It says, "Arin Nazir amanashe ei sho seyayin mitam lemesim arei ze Nazir v'asu b'chulin." The reisha said that if a fellow says that he's a Nazir under the condition that he could drink wine or become Tamei Meis, so we say, forget about it. You are a Nazir. Let Reb Shimon argue oichet darin. Let Reb Shimon oichet argue that he's mutter, just like in the next case he says Reb Shimon says he's mutter, right? If he says that I know that Nazirs don't get haircuts, I didn't realize that they can't drink wine. Reb Shimon says that he's mutter, he's not a Nazir. So why doesn't he say the same thing in the ratio when he says that he's a Nazir but he wants to drink wine? Reb Shimon should say he's mutter darin. So l'fagnam Reb Shimon b'reisha, Reb Shimon ben Levi says Reb Shimon ben Levi chalukay Reb Shimon av. Chalukay Reb Shimon av b'reisha. So it says Reb Shimon ben Levi that take. You're right. Reb Shimon does argue in the reisha as well. And if a fellow says that he's going to be a Nazir but he's going to continue drinking wine, so he's mutter. He's not a Nazir. Ravina Omar says Ravina b'reisha lo polig Reb Shimon. No, Reb Shimon does not argue in the reisha because my time mishum davle maslam ashakos bateir. Because he's making conditions, he's playing games, he's making conditions with that which is written in the Torah. No, it says mufurish. There must be a good Yiddish word for clear. There must be a I'm in a groove now with the Chabad Shaliach. I can ask him what's the Yiddish word for clear. Akaponim. I might even know it somewhere in my brain with all the mishigas in there. I might have a Yiddish word somewhere in there. Akaponim. Where were we? Oh. It says in the Torah that a Nazir doesn't drink wine, a Nazir doesn't cut his hair, a Nazir doesn't become Tamei Meis. He can't just say, I want to be a Nazir, but I'm going to drink wine. No way, no how. He's Masna Mashakosov Batore, V'chamasna Mashakosov Batore, to no bottle. And if a fellow makes a condition on that which is written in the Torah, his condition is irrelevant. And therefore, if he says that he's going to be a Nazir under the condition that he can drink wine, forget about it. That's a ridiculous condition. It doesn't exist. And all he's saying is that he's going to be a Nazir. Forget it. There's no condition involved. Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Rabbi Shua ben Levi would say to you, Hai al menas kichutz domi. Now, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, right? Doesn't Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi also hold of the concept of chol masna ma'ach shekosov b'torah to no bottle? So how can he say that Rabbi Shimon would say it's mutter? Well, he would say that when he says he would explain it as ki chutz dami, right? Chutz miyain. Right, now we had seen a machlokas earlier. Where was this machlokas? Where was this machlokas? What was that? Gimel Amud Beis, did we see? Hakoponim. We had a machlokas earlier between the Chachamim and Reb Shimon about if you say that you're a Nazir with the exception of something, right? So you accept upon yourself to be a Nazir with regard to being Tamei Meis, or with regard to not cutting your hair. So the Chachamim say that he's a Nazir, and Reb Shimon say no, he would have to say, if you would have to specify each thing. And therefore, if he's saying that, so Reb Yehoshua ben Levi understands the ratio of the Mishnah that when he says that he's going to be a Nazir under the condition that he can drink wine, he's basically saying that he's a Nazir with the exception, right? Chutz, right? With the exception of wine, i.e., he's only accepting part of the aspects of Nazirus upon himself, and therefore it's irrelevant because you have to accept everything according to Reb Shimon, and that's why Reb Yehoshua ben Levi says that Reb Shimon would argue even in the ratio and say that he's not a Nazir. Tanikavase, the Ravina, we have a brisa that supports Ravina, who says that that Itaka would be that Reb Shimon would argue, that Reb Shimon would agree with the Reisha that he would be a Nazir because the Tanai is bottle. Amar Areni Nazir Amnash Shosayain Mitamil Meisim, that if a fellow says that he is going to be a Nazir under the condition that he's nonetheless going to be able to drink wine or become Tamei Meis, Hareze Nazir is taka Nazir v'asu b'chulon, and he's a full-fledged Nazir mipnei, because Shemas Namash Kosav Torah is making a condition with that which is written in the Torah of V'chol, Hamas Namash Kosav Torah to no bottle, and if you make a condition on that which is written in the Holy Torah, the Tanai is bottle and irrelevant, and therefore Reb Shimon would agree in the Reisha that he is not that Itaka is a Nazir. Fellow says, I know that a Nazir is not allowed to drink wine. Right? That in the Sefer of the Mishnah, so there are three parts of the Mishnah. Part one of the Mishnah is when he says that he wants to be that he's going to be a Nazir, but he's going to Al Menashe Shosayain, or whatever it was, right? That under the condition that he's going to be able to drink wine. So in that case, we said everybody says that he's a Nazir. If he says that, now the second part of the Mishnah is that if he says he's going to be a Nazir, but he didn't realize that Nazirs aren't allowed to drink wine. So in that case, the Tanakama says he's a Nazir, Reb Shimon says he's mutter, he's not a Nazir. Then in the Sefer, we say punkt vaker. In the Sefer, we say that if he says, I know that a Nazir is not allowed to drink wine, but I thought there was going to be an exception for me because I need wine to live, or because, right, or with regard to Tamei Meis, he says, I'm a grave digger. So in that case, we say punkt vaker. The Chacham said that he's not a Nazir, and Reb Shimon says he is a Nazir. So now, effectively, Gemara, Anisha Nazir also behind. So if he says that he knows that a Nazir is also behind, but he thought the rabbis would make an exception for him because he can't live without wine, also Reb Shimon matir. How come in the Sefer, how come in this case, the rabbis are saying that he's not a Nazir, and Reb Shimon's being stringent and saying that he is a Nazir, whereas in the second case of the Mishnah, where he says that he knows about Nazirus, but he didn't realize that applies to wine, Reb Shimon would say he's takamuter, and the Chacham would say that he's a Nazir. From Matreisha also Reb Shimon matir, Eimanami Areza also Reb Shimon matir. So first the Gemara says, okay, say the same thing in the Sefer as well. That the Tanakama says he's a Nazir and Reb Shimon says he's not a Nazir. Alternatively, the Olam Lo Teipel. Or really, no, don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. Hasam, in the second part of the Mishnah, where he says, I know about Nazirus, but I didn't realize that it applies to wine. Reb Shimon, Reisha, Kigon, Dinazir. Wait, what did I don't think I skipped anything, but Hasam, Reisha, Kigon, Dinazir, Michada. So the Reisha is talking about where he's only becoming a partial Nazir, right? He's saying that I'm a Nazir, but he's basically with the exception of wine. He didn't realize that applies to wine, so he's only basically he's only accepting part of the aspects of Nazir upon himself. The Rabbanon Damri Da'afil Lo Nazir Ela Me'achas Me'en Have a Nazir Osir. So according to the rabbis who say that even if you only except Nazirus with regard to one aspect of it, you are nonetheless a Nazir, so therefore he's a Nazir. Reb Shimon de Omar, Hachiazir mikulam mutter. But according to Reb Shimon, who says that you're only a Nazir if you accept all of the parts of the Nazirus, well then, he's clearly not accepting the part about the wine because he didn't realize it applies to wine, so therefore he's not a Nazir. The Reb Shimon, where am I? Seifa, now however, in the last part of the Mishnah, where it says that he knows about all the halachas of Nazir. He knows a Nazir can't get a haircut. He knows that a Nazir can't drink wine. He knows that a Nazir can't become a mason. However, he thought that for whatever reason the rabbis would make a exception for him. So in that case, Sefer de Nazir mikulu v'itshil mechada, and now he's trying to get an exception for one aspect of it. So he knows that Nazirus applies to all of these things. But now he's trying to say, but I hope that the rabbis are going to make an exception for me with regard to wine because I can't live without wine. So basically he's accepting Nazirus upon himself, but then doing a hatara, he's trying to do a hataras nedarim with regard to one aspect of Nazirus. Well, the rabbis who say that even if he says that he's just going to be a Nazir with regard to wine, then he's a full-fledged Nazir. Well then, ki mitchil michada minayu ishtri. Well, just like when you accept Nazirus upon yourself, you can accept one aspect of Nazirus and it would make you a full-fledged Nazir. So you could say the same thing by doing hataras nedarim. That if you're a full-fledged Nazir and you do hataras nedarim with regard to only one aspect, that's going to make you completely not a Nazir. So if you are a Nazir, so if he accepts Nazirus upon himself and then he's basically trying to do hataras nedarim with regard to wine because he can't live without wine, so if he's mutter from wine, he's mutter from the entire Nazirus, and that's why the rabbis say that he's not a Nazir. The Reb Shimon de Amar Hachiazir mikulam, and Reb Shimon who says that you're only a Nazir if you accept all aspects of Nazirus upon yourself, well then kimat shel navi me'ahu ademitra mikulu b'shemochi katani Reb Shimon oser. So Reb Shimon would also say that in this case, when he says that he's a Nazir and he knows all about the halachos of Nazir, but he's trying to get out of the wine restriction, well, just like Reb Shimon says that you have to accept all aspects of Nazirus, you would also have to do a Torah from all aspects of Nazirus if you want to get out of it. And over here, he's only trying to get an exception with regard to the wine, and that won't work. And therefore, Reb Shimon says that he remains a Nazir. He would have to do a Torah and Darim for all aspects of Nazirus. Alternatively, Benidre onsin kol mifligay. This is the machlokas is how do you understand Nidre onsin? Right? Gemara we saw in Masechta Nedarim. Let's go weiter for a second. We flew to the Shmuel and for Ravasi. It's like the machlokas between Shmuel and Ravasi. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Abba Nedarim hitiru chachamim, that there were four. But this is a Mishnah that we had in Masechta Nedarim, that there are four types of Nedarim that you don't even need a hataras Nedarim. They're just automatically permitted. Nidre zeruzin, friends. Remember what Nidre zeruzin is? Haggling. Excuse me. Oh. The fourth, what do we call it? The 4-3-2. What is it called? The 4-3-2 dance. You remember that from Masechta Nedarim? I think I dubbed that the 4-3-2 dance. That, the seller says that it costs 4 shekels. The guy says, no way, no how, I'm paying 2 shekels. But everybody knows in advance that they're going to settle on 3 shekels. So therefore, when he says he's not going any lower than 4, he's not really making a neder that he's not going any lower than 4. It's not like he's, now he's stuck. He can't go lower than 4. No, the whole point was, he was just haggling. So fun. So nidre zeruzin, nidre avoy, or, a neder that's obviously an exaggeration. Like, he sees 600,000 people. Nidre shkogis, or if you make a mistake. Nidre onsin, or if you say like you're making a neder that you're gonna a neder based on your ability to get somewhere or something, and then some onus happens and you can't get there. So in all these situations, you don't even need to do a hataras nedarim. From Rav Yehuda Amar Vasi says Rav Yehuda Amar Vasi, that these 4 nedarim you have to do hataras nedarim. Kamisa Kami de Shmuel, and says Rav Yehuda that when he said this before Shmuel, Amrli Tana Katani Hitiru Chacham V'Atomar Tzrichin Sheila LaChachamim. Shmuel says, I don't understand. The Mishnah says that they're permitted, and you're saying that you have to do hataras nedarim. Rabbanan Tzavik Shmuel Reb Shimon Kirav Ashi. So the rabbis who say that meaning this is a situation of Nidre Onsin, right? He's making a neder Nazirus, but he can't live without wine, or he's a grave digger or whatever, right? There's some kind of onus situation over here. So according to Shmuel, who says that you don't even need a Ataris Nadarim. It's obviously, but the neder goes away. So that's like the Chacham who say that he's not a Nazir. And Reb Shimon holds like Rav Asi, who says you would still have to do Ataris Nadarim, meaning that until you do Ataris Nadarim, you're actually a Nazir. So here as well, even though it's Nidrei Onsin, he would be a Nazir, and he would have to do Ataris Nadarim on that. Alright, very interesting stuff. Friends, now we get to another Mishnah. Alright, you hear this? A fellow says that he's going to be a Nazir, and he also accepts upon himself to sponsor the sacrifices of some other Nazir fellow. So he says, I'm going to be a Nazir, and I'm going to sponsor somebody else's Naziris Korbanis. And his friend hears him, and he says, Va'ani va'ala legaleach Nazir, mi oichit, and I'm also going to sponsor a fellow to bring his korbanos. Ima, you pick him if they were smart. Megalchen says zeh, so they would just fund each other's korbanos, right? Meaning, Reuven says that he's a Nazir and he's going to sponsor somebody's korbanos. Shimon says that him too, and he's also going to sponsor somebody's korbanos. So let them just sponsor each other's korbanos. If not, they can sponsor just other people's korbanos. Fine. What if he, right, in our Mishnah, right, the Shimon had said, Va'ani ve'ola legaleach Nazir. He said, me too, and also I will sponsor somebody's korbanos. What if he didn't say that, and also I'm going to sponsor somebody's korbanos? What if Reuven says, I'm a Nazir, and I'm going to sponsor somebody's korbanos, and then Shimon just said, and me too. So, Va'ani akule dibur mashma. So when Shimon says me too, is he saying me too to all of the things that Reuven said, i.e. that Shimon is accepting upon himself to be a Nazir, and also that he's going to sponsor somebody else's korbanis? O dilma, or perhaps apalge de dibur mashma. Or maybe when he says Va'ani, he's only accepting one of Reuven's two statements. Right? Reuven said he's going to be a Nazir and sponsor somebody else's. When Shimon says Va'ani, me too, maybe he's only referring to one of Reuven's statements. And if you say Shimon's only referring to one of Reuven's statements, mashma, aresha aseifa. If when Shimon says Va'ani and me too, it's only talking about one of Reuven's statements. So is it the statement that Shimon is saying he's also going to be a Nazir, or is Shimon saying that he's also going to sponsor korbanos? Tashma coming here, Va'ani ve'ola legaleach Nazir. So the Mishnah had said that if Shimon says Va'ani ve'ola legaleach Nazir, if they were smart, then they would sponsor each other. Midika Amar Va'ani ve'olai. From the fact that he says, and me too, and also I'm going to sponsor somebody's korbanos, the fact that he had to specify that he's going to sponsor korbanos, in addition to saying Va'ani, Shmamina Va'ani apalga de dibura. Well, implying that Va'ani would only be referring to half of the statement, that Va'ani would be referring to that he's also going to be a Nazir, and then he specifies separately, and he's also going to sponsor somebody's korbanos. Amri in apalge dibura mashma. So they say, yeah, fine. It's referring to half of Reuven's statement. Miu aresha aseifa. Where am I? Miu aresha aseifa. But is he is Va'ani referring to the Nazirus or the korbanos sponsorship? Mina umina nidikam va'ala legaleach shma mina Va'ani atchilas. I jumped the gun a shtickle, but the Gemara is clarifying that yes, from the fact that he says ve'olai ligaleach Nazir, that the fact that in addition to saying that the fact that Shimon, in addition to saying Va'ani and me too, he then specifically specifies, and I will sponsor somebody's Nazir korbanos. Clearly, then Va'ani is not referring to sponsoring the korbanos; it's referring to that he's also going to be Nazir, i.e. the first part of the statement. It's kind of like object destructuring in JavaScript, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. Amalei Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua leRave. So Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua says to Rave. You ready for what Rav Huna Brei Rav Yoshua says to Rave? Mimai dehachi hu. How do you know that Va'ani is only referring to the Naziris? Le'olam ema lach Va'ani akule didibura. I'll say that when Shimon says va'ani, he's referring to the Gantz statement of Ruvain, to the entire statement of Ruvain. That when Shimon says va'ani, he's saying that I'm also going to be a Nazir, and I'm also going to sponsor the korbanos of a Nazir. Ve'imishum ve'olai ma'ika amar. And if you're going to say, yeah, but then what's the point of Shimon then saying ve'olai ligaleach Nazir? Ve'olai biha milsa. No, what he's saying is, and therefore I will sponsor another Nazir. Kilu, Reuven says that he's going to be a Nazir and he's going to sponsor a Nazir, right? The korbanos of a Nazir. And Shimon says va'ani, and me too, and therefore va'ala legaleach Nazir, and therefore I will be sponsoring another Nazir. The ilotema, because if you don't say like this, says Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, dikatani seifa. If we in the seifa, where's the seifa? And Yud Beis and Yud Beis, when it says ha'ri'ola legaleach chatzi Nazir. When a fellow says that I'm going to sponsor half of the korbanos of a Nazir, and I am also going to sponsor the korbanos of half of a Nazir. Hasam miika tarte mile. Over there's only two things, right? Meaning, in the Sefer, in the Mishnah on Yud Beis and Beis, Reuven says, I'm going to sponsor half of the korbanos of a Nazir. And Shimon says, me too. I'm also going to sponsor half of the korbanos of the Nazir. And there it's impossible to say that va'ani is referring to the first part of the statement. There only was one part of the statement. Reuven says he's going to pay for half of the korbanos of a Nazir. Shimon says, me too. I'm also going to sponsor half of the korbanos of a Nazir. So when he says olai, right? So in the next Mishnah, in Yud Beis and Beis, when Shimon says va'ani olai legaleach Nazir, what he's saying is, yeah, I'm also going to pay for the korbanos of a Nazir. So let's say here in our Mishnah that when Reuven says that he's going to be a Nazir and he's going to sponsor the korbanos of a Nazir, maybe va'ani, when Shimon says va'ani, is referring to the whole thing, and va'olai legaleach Nazir is just a clarification that what he means is that therefore he needs to pay for the sponsor the korbanos of a Nazir. Ki ka'amar olei ba'milsa. So amalei Rave. So it says Rave hachi ashti yomat b'shlama reisha tzricha seifa lo tzricha. Tani seifa lo tzricha mishum reisha de tzricha. Says Rave, look. Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua, I'm not makabel that explanation. Because says Rav, look, I can explain that maybe in the Seifa, when Reuven says he's going to sponsor half of the korbanos of a Nazir, and Shimon says va'ani ola legaleach chatzi Nazir, and I am also going to sponsor half of the korbanos of a Nazir. Technically, he could have just said va'ani. So why does it say ola legaleach chatzi Nazir if it's not necessary? He could have just said va'ani. Well, because in the Reisha we needed it. Because in the Reisha, says Rava, va'ani is actually only referring to the first part of the statement. In the Reisha, in our Mishnah, Reuven had said that I'm going to be a Nazir, and I'm also going to sponsor the korbanos of another Nazir. And says Rava, that when Shimon says va'ani, it means that I'm going to be a Nazir. It has nothing to do with the sponsoring the other part of the, right, sponsoring the korbanos of the Nazir. And therefore Shimon has to then add va'ala legaleach chatzi Nazir. And in addition to being a Nazir, I'm also going to sponsor the korbanos of another Nazir. So in the Reisha we need va'ani ola legaleach Nazir. In the Reisha we need both va'ani and va'ala legaleach Nazir. And in the Seifa, even though all we need is for Shimon to say va'ani, which is to agree with Reuven that he's also going to pay for half of the korbanos of a Nazir, ola legaleach chatzi Nazir is only there because we needed it in the first part. So says Rava, look, it makes sense to say that the Reisha of va'ani is only referring to the first part of Reuven's statement, and ve'ola legaleach chatzi Nazir is referring that he's also going to sponsor the korbanos of a Nazir. And then in the second Mishnah, when it says va'ani ola legaleach chatzi Nazir, even though I don't need va'ola legaleach chatzi Nazir, because he already said va'ani, which is referring to, right, the one statement that Reuven had said, which is going to pay for half of the korbanos of the Nazir, but we include Olai legalei chatzi nazir only to be consistent with the ratio where we needed to say Va'ani Olai legalei chatzi nazir. But according to you, Rav Huna ben Yoshua, Ela I amad reisha lo tzricha, seifa lo tzricha, tini reisha lo tzricha, but tini seifa lo tzricha. But according to you, Rav Huna ben Yoshua, you're saying that we don't need it to say v'alai legalei chatzi nazir in the reisha because va'ani is referring to all of it. And then in the next Mishnah, on Yud Beis Amud Beis, also when he says va'ani, it's referring to Reuven's entire statement. So you also don't need to say alai legalei chatzi nazir. So why say it at all? Why say va'ani ala legaleach nazir and ve'ala legaleach chatzi nazir when neither statements are necessary? So rather Rava argues, like we said initially, that when Shimon says va'ani, it's referring to that he's also going to be a nazir, and when he says ve'ala legaleach chatzi nazir, it's saying that he's also accepting upon himself to offer the korbanos of a nazir. Friends, that was Daf Yud Aleph Masechta Nazir. We learned about if a fellow says that he's going to be if they're pouring him wine, he says that he's a Nazir from the wine, so he's a full-fledged Nazir. But if he's fashnikit, then he's just not allowed to drink that particular glass of wine. If a fellow says that he is a Nazir under the condition that he should be able to drink wine or become Taman and Mason, he's just a straight-out Nazir. We said that if he doesn't realize that Nazir is not allowed to drink wine, and Tanakama says he's a Nazir, Reb Shimon says that he is not a Nazir, but if he says that he knows that he's not allowed to drink wine, but he thought he would be able to get an exception, so therefore it's fakert, the Tanakama says that he's not a Nazir, and Reb Shimon Taka says that he is a Nazir. And then we had this interesting situation at the end where he says that Reuven says he's going to be a Nazir and he's going to pay for the korbanos of a Nazir, and Shimon says that he's also going to be a Nazir and that he's also going to pay for the korbanos of a Nazir. Does va'ani refer to the whole statement or only part of the statement? In the end we said it only refers to the first part, which is why Shimon then needed to clarify ve'olai legaleach nazir. Friends, that was Daf Yud Aleph from Masechta Nazir. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.